Local police are now saying at least one passenger on board the Air India flight survived, incredibly. The newspaper Hindustan Times quotes the man as a British national, saying he heard a loud noise 30 seconds after takeoff. At least 290 people have died, according to Reuters. The Boeing 787 Dreamliner was bound for London when it went down in a residential area near the Ahmedabad airport. We want to warn you, the video you're about to see, you may find disturbing. You can see the plane struggling to stay airborne, then descending, then disappearing behind buildings and bursting into a fireball. Authorities say the plane hit a doctor's hostel as it went down. About 50 to 60 students were there. Were taken to hospital, and that's according to the All India Medical Association. Teams from both the US and the UK have been deployed to India to assist with the crash investigation. Salma Abdelaziz is following the latest developments for us from London, and our hearts go out to anyone affected by this. But there is a moment of apparent joy that came out of it as well.
Well, I think that when we saw those initial images, of course, Max, of the scorched earth, of portions of the plane lodged in a building, of the huge fires, we thought it would only be a miracle if someone survived. And now that miracle seems to have happened. One man, passenger seat 11A, found in hospital by reporters. But there is also a tragedy in this, Max. He says his brother was also on board that plane. He doesn't know his fate. We've also received the latest death toll from a local police official who says that there is 294 people feared dead. That means that there are many more people who died on the ground, in addition, of course, to the nearly 240 souls on board that flight. This is a very global tragedy, of course. You had more than 50 nationals from the UK, several nationals from Portugal, and a national from Canada, in addition to more than 160 Indian nationals. So you're absolutely seeing this global response take place, starting, of course, with India's Prime Minister, Narendra Modi, who says he has deployed his top officials on the ground to provide that help and support. Air India has been setting up hotlines and help desks to respond to the questions of families who I'm sure right now are going through. Who I'm sure right now are going through a roller coaster of emotion from hearing, of course, this news of the one miracle survivor. Now, for those families, again, seeking answers, this will begin to give them more questions, as the airline CEO had given a press conference a short time ago, Max, alluding to some passengers who were injured making it to hospital. Now, you're looking also at the image of the plane, portions of the plane lodged in a building. That building is a doctor's hostel where medical students would have been gathering for lunch. We understand dozens of those students may have been killed or wounded and rushed to the nearby hospital, in addition, of course, to many other local residents who could have been wounded in that very fiery explosion. I want to go through the timeline just one more time, because this happened so quickly, almost instantaneously. The plane taking off around 1:40 local time, and less than a minute later, it loses signal. You've played that video where you see a plane that should have been gaining altitude, instead nosediving rather to the ground and ending in that fiery explosion and leading to the aftermath that you're seeing there. Scorched earth, burned out buildings, blazes for these emergency workers to put out. There's going to be an investigation, and I think that's already underway. The US, Britain have sent investigators to help and aid with that investigation, but answers to an investigation will come later down the line. For right now, it is about answering the questions of those families that want to know if their loved one made it out. I'm sure this miracle survivor will give that sense of hope. Did my loved one make it out? And what happened? What went so terribly wrong?
Police say at least one passenger survived the world's deadliest air disaster in more than a decade. Local officials say at least 290 people were killed in the plane and on the ground after this Air India jet crashed into a city neighborhood in Ahmedabad, Western India. The Boeing 787-8 Dreamliner was carrying 242 passengers and crew members as it was headed to London. The survivor is a British man, and he's now at a local hospital. A senior police officer shared with Reuters he had been traveling with his brother, but does not know if his brother survived. Let's get the latest from CNN's Tom Foreman. So, Tom, talk to us about what we know regarding this particular flight and this particular aircraft.
We know, first of all, that there is no reason to think that it was not going to successfully make this flight from India to Gatwick Airport. This plane has had a stellar record for the 12 years it's been there. It's been doing very, very well. And yet something went dreadfully wrong. If you look at what happened during the takeoff from here to the crash site, this is a very fast sequence. In this video, you watch it taxiing down here. We've been talking about it being maybe a minute from this to the other. It actually was in the air for, I think, 30 seconds.
Wow.
And climbing for only maybe 12 or 15 seconds of it. If you watch this here, watch, it starts coming up here, looks more or less normal, not necessarily to aviators, but to the rest of us, it looks more or less normal. It's level, and this is about it. It stops climbing in just a moment here and starts slowly sinking back down to the earth here. Wow. Important clues to look at, but also gives you an idea of the incredibly short period of time they had to deal with anything that might have been going wrong. And then, of course, when we go to the wreckage site, you can see where it came down here and all the questions that this raises, Boris. I mean, one of them being, how did the tail wind up where it was?
Right. And seemingly intact. I mean, other than the damage, it didn't catch fire.
I mean, having covered a lot of accidents like that and been to these accident sites, there's a lot of pieces of this plane that seem kind of together, which is unusual. And that giant firebomb there, and look at this, the main fire over there, that was the tail over there some distance away. How they got there, we don't know. There are many questions about what went wrong. Was this just a pilot error? Did something else go wrong? We just don't really know. Again, everyone's cooperating on this. Boeing's cooperating. They're all getting together, but they have to answer these questions. I do want to bring up the seat map because it's very interesting. We talk about that one survivor. Look, this is where he was seated. Seat 11A. It's the first row of economy. And you may also notice it's right next to an exit here, right alongside the window. So whether that all played a role, I mean, who knows? When a plane like this comes completely apart, it could be someone anywhere in here. And yet that is the place where it happened to come out for that gentleman in a positive way.
Just stunning, considering the wreckage site and the flames and everything that we saw, that someone was able to just walk.
We see, we see it once in a while, but in my experience, it is very unusual. I mean, there have been even the very rare cases of people and a plane comes apart in air and they fall to the ground and they survive, but incredibly unusual. And of course, a terrifically horrible story for everybody else, but mainly a big, big, big mystery in terms of the plane. The question is, why did this happen? How did it happen so quickly? Because again, the point I keep making, and some of our aviation analysts are making, this plane never completed that transition from being on the ground to really being in the air. It was making that transition when something went wrong.
I've covered other air crashes and there have been survivors. They've nearly always sat at the back of the plane. This survivor was in seat 11A towards the front of the plane. I mean, how extraordinary is that? And, are you able to explain it in any way?
That is extraordinary. And that's the first I've heard it. I didn't realize that this gentleman was that far forward. By looking at the picture of the tail that I saw sticking out of the building that was extremely intact, I really expected him to be toward the rear. We have seen this with accidents in the past that we're not able to explain. That I don't want to say luck of the draw, but that it's just a matter of where you're seated sometimes. And as debris comes through the cabin, the amount of forces that are transmitted through the cabin, sometimes you're in a location where those forces are tolerable and you happen to be the person that receives those forces that are tolerable and has an escape path. And sometimes it's just, that's the explanation. But that's impressive to be that far forward, especially an airplane that is going through a building. That's quite amazing.
It's unbelievable. I'm sure he's asking more questions than anyone about how he survived. Sean, really appreciate you joining us with your incredible insights. Benjamin Katz is a reporter for the Wall Street Journal covering global aviation. He joins us live from London. A lot of the shock here actually outside India and the families directly affected has been that a Dreamliner came down. Were you surprised?
I mean, it is a moment in history for this aircraft. The 787 has been operating since about 2011, and it has had 0 fatal accidents until today. In that sense, yes, I mean, very shocked. Also, just picking up the clues and looking at what potentially may have happened, although I caution that it's far too soon to say with any certainty, what actually occurred. But really kind of basic errors that you can even pick out, such as, the landing gear being retracted too early, still being out, and, on the inverse, the flaps on the aircraft being retracted appearingly, seemingly too early. These are kind of quite basic things that, the Boeing 787 is a very advanced aircraft and has a lot of mechanisms to kind of ensure that these kind of issues don't occur.